Hi everyone, welcome to Campbell Hall. My name is Melissa Goldman and I'm the FabLab manager at the School of Architecture. Today we're going to be giving you a little tour of our fabrication lab, so come follow me into the lab. So the Fab Lab at the School of Architecture is the center for making and fabrication research at the school. We service students, faculty, and staff in all of our departments, as well as people from around grounds who are making their ideas physical. So we have a number of spaces that we're going to tour today and show you all of the different tools and talk a little bit about our crew and our expertises that we have that you can access. One of the big things for us as part of the Fab Lab is that we are a teaching center. So we are not only teaching you the tools of the trade, but we're also teaching you the conversations that you have around materials making and construction. So even if you're not the one who is going to be physically making in the future, we know that it is really important as a design driver to understand all of those processes, how materials work, how these tools work in order to design for that industry. And if this is your passion, we are really excited to kind of build that passion while you're here, give you all of the tools that you need to kind of keep going with fabrication being a center of your education at UVA. So right now we're standing in the Open Lab. The Open Lab is a 24/7 space that all of our students get as part of training. You can see that you're over in the laser cutting area, which is kind of a favorite of our students. And they can be used for all sorts of things like modeling and full-scale prototyping. Also in the lab are things like all of our fleet of 3D printers, whether you're printing in FDM plastic, or you're doing some sort of SLA work with resin, or you're printing out of clay. And later we'll be showing you a little bit of how we print out of metal. So this space, as I said, is 24/7, and it just gives people a little bit more breathing room to make things, to be down here with access to some of our tools. We have our sewing machine set up. We have a CNC embroidery machine where people are making everything from patterns in fabric to hardware, structure, to maps. We also have expertise and a setup for soldering and electronics and sensors, which can be embedded in a number of kind of work that students are doing at the School of Architecture. As part of the Open Lab, you see into the wood shop. So we'll go into the wood shop and I'll talk a little bit about that. Welcome to the wood shop. The wood shop is the center and the heart of our Fab Lab. It's where all of the students first get trained in order to get their hands on tools and materials, kind of understand different scales of projects. So the wood shop is servicing everything from tiny little block models to furniture to full-scale prototypes. One of the things that we do in here is have our crew of TAs are stationed here, and that's when the wood shop part of the lab is open for use. These TAs are amazing makers and experts in making in the school. They're undergrads and grads from different departments, as well as departments around grounds. And they are here to consult with you, to train you, and to basically be those experts in making that you can tap into as part of your resources at the school. So right now we're standing in the wood shop. We sometimes expand out into our outdoor courtyard, and we have other spaces in the school that people will pull tools into and build. We, as I said, are set up for kind of the model scale as well as the larger scale, and we allow students to get on all of these tools through training. This room is usually packed full of people. The whole lab is usually packed full of people when students are here, and it's a really exciting environment to be part of. Welcome to our Amala CNC lab, which is the home of our large CNC 3-axis router. This is a tool that students get to get their hands on through training, and is a really useful tool for cutting things out in 2 and 3 dimensions. That you might be building in the computer. So the way that it works is that it holds an end mill, which is a knife, like this one, and it spins it at 18,000 revolutions a minute. So that can cut through foam, wood, plastics, a number of other softer materials. And it can do movements in, if you think of your graph paper, in your x-axis, your y-axis, and then going in and out of the page in Z. And that allows you to start to carve things. So what are our students using it for? A lot of students are using it to make topography models that they will then use for flow tests or as a representative piece that they can use in conversation and dialogue. We cut a lot of foam for concrete formwork, whether it's kind of small scans of textures like this one or large full-scale furniture pieces. And that's a big part of research as part of the Fab Lab at the school. We also have panels and patterns that students are designing and making custom. And sometimes we'll have the unique, fun pumpkin that we're gonna be routing. Whatever it is, we're game to try it. And we're really excited to get you on the tools itself. So we have tutorials that go through all of the software as well as the hardware. So you're the one who's actually running the equipment, which is pretty fun.
Hi, I'm Trevor Kemp and I help run the Fab Lab with Melissa. And we're over here by our 3D printers, and these are heavily used items by students. These ones are our FDM, or fused deposition modeling printers. It's what most people think of when they think of 3D printers. They make models like this using thermoplastic. And one of the other flavors of 3D printers we have is SLA printers that can make very high resolution models with fun resins like something that's clear. And then we also have other technologies like our PotterBot, which can extrude clay into a model such as this. So the training for all of these printers and more is included in some of our short courses. And that's a sort of format where we spend an hour or two going over a very specific procedure, technology, or one of the pieces of equipment we have. So besides the 3D printers, that could be like how to make a cutting board or how to use our CNC routing machine. And that kind of training is available to students throughout the semester.
In the summer of 2019, we did a huge renovation and expansion of our Fab Lab. We actually got 3 times the size of what we were before. And one of the things that we wanted to add was something called our Fab Lab studios and our garage area to be able to house fabrication-based curricula and research as part of the lab. So come follow me, and you can see down the hall just from the open lab and wood shop are our Fab Lab studios. So similar to the studios upstairs in Campbell Hall, these are spaces for classes, seminars, and studios to be housed per semester that are hands-on based making and fabrication research as part of our curricula. And what they're able to do is then set up work cells of their tools, their materials, their projects, where they are going to focus for most of the semester. So let's go into the Fab Lab studios. This is the studio space. It has furniture that gets pulled apart and put back together for different types of teaching styles and working on larger projects. This semester, we have a 3rd-year design thinking studio that's housed down here and a 4th-year thesis studio for the architecture department. And we also have a historic preservation seminar that is looking at traditional building materials and building techniques. And so for the semester, they're housed down here and they're able to set up how they need to in groups and individually in order to complete projects that involve making things and making big things. Last semester, we had 2 vertical studios, so that's our undergrads and our grads pushed together. And they were working with digital fabrication of wood in different ways. So one was looking at different physical materials that they could exploit of wood in order to get some really cool projects and construction techniques. And the other was looking at robotic milling as part of large-scale prototypes for wood robotic construction.
Welcome to the garage. This space is new with the renovation that we completed last year, and it's a large reconfigurable workspace that is adjacent to the Fab Lab studios. So that allows projects to sort of come and go between the spaces, and it allows them the space to build larger, more complex projects that can happen throughout the whole semester. And so this space provides a lot of access to different tools and equipment and power and compressed air and dust collection and all kinds of things like that. And this is really one of the things we're most excited about the new FabLab renovation. And up at the north end of this, we have some of our specialized tools like the KUKA robotic arms.
So some of our favorite tools in the lab for research are our KUKA industrial robots. We have 2 of our fleet here. We have a fleet of 4 small arms, and we're actually getting a larger 8-foot arm in. And what do designers do with industrial robotic arms? They're becoming a really big part of construction research, working with humans in order to design and build with materials and processes that we were not able to do before. And so what students are doing are developing what are called the end effectors, or the tools that are on the end of the robot, learning how to code those, learning how to code the robot's movement, and then producing prototypes and research in a number of different fields. So this robot is set up for 3D printing plastic, whether it's in a traditional layered technique or in something called spatial printing, which is moving off plane. We also have a robot over here that is being set up for 3D printing concrete, so developing the mix, developing the prototype, and eventually scaling up to full-scale prototypes that could be inhabited. We've done a lot of different things with our robots, whether that's putting magnets on the end of them and doing experimental casting, or putting a hot wire bow in order to carve foam, or putting a router on the end of it and having a 6-axis robotic milling setup. And it's a really exciting tool because it's a base 6-axis robot with the movement similar to your arm, like 2 axes in your shoulder, 1 in your elbow, your forearm, and then your wrist. And then you can put anything you want on the end of it. And so we're teaching students how to do that whole process in order to push the construction industry forward with robots.
The latest extension of our 3D printing technology in the Fab Lab is the desktop metal system. So this printer and the associated equipment can produce pieces that are made of solid stainless steel. So here's an example of some of the geometry that can be created with that, which would be difficult to do in any other way, or maybe impossible. And so we're really excited that this is a technology that we can use not only within the architecture school, but to collaborate across grounds with other groups, such as people from engineering, material science, and the arts. And we're excited that our students have access to this capability.
So the Fab Lab at the A School is just one in a network of shops, labs, and maker spaces across UVA called Maker Grounds. There are people like Trevor and I and our crew that are all over UVA with tools and expertise to help you. So if you didn't see something today on our tour, it's probably somewhere else at UVA, like vacuumforming, welding, water jetting. They're all our Fab Lab friends all throughout grounds. One of the great things about Maker Grounds is that it's centers of cross-disciplinary research and projects. So while we are able to go there, they are also able to come here. So we have people from engineering to English, and we're going to places like music and drama and studio art and engineering in the libraries in order to use all of the different tools that are at our disposal.
Thanks for taking a virtual visit to the Fab Lab with us here today.
And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to us at fablab@virginia.edu. Have a great day. Bye. But I will go from here. All right. So as a path to admit, how do tutorials and trainings work? So different flavors of grad students and what we do. So trainings to the lab are in kind of two types, really, formal trainings. We have our introductory trainings that we do for everyone. And for grad students, that's either during Summer Design Institute
for the Path 3s and the participating 2.5s, and then during the very first weeks of fall semester for Path 2s. So what we do is we teach kind of a core group of tools. We know that some people have experience and some people don't. Both of those situations are great. We love training. And so we do some basics in the wood shop specifically. It's all hands-on, taught by Trevor, myself, and our TA crew. So you get to meet a number of people from the team, from the FabLab team. And then we also go over laser cutters. So those are done for everyone right at the beginning, just so you can start to get those into your toolbox. And then the other types of training are what are called through our shop short courses. These are actually not only in our school, but also around grounds or around our campus. It's called grounds. And it will teach you in a specific tool or technique. So if you want to use some of the more advanced tools in the wood shop, we will do a short course on that, and you sign up. It's not for credit, it's not for pay, it's all free. We just try to coordinate groups of people. Sometimes we do that based on studios, so a studio will request something. We'll do CNC routing, 3D printing, a number of that. What this digital world and virtual world has allowed us to do is actually set up a number of our basic workflows as video tutorials. So we're trying that out with, for example, RhinoCam is the software we use for our CNC routers. And so we've been making that available to students, and they can watch it. And then we have a training module afterwards at the actual machine so you can run the buttons. So those are kind of the two formal trainings, but Philip does a great follow-up. Are you all always available to aid in model making and difficulties? Yes. Are we available 24/7? I mean, if you text me at 2 in the morning, I will probably respond, but we try to keep it to when crew is here. But Trevor and I are here Monday through Friday, usually between the hours of 9, 10 to 6, 7, 8. Things like that, sometimes later. And our crew is here. So those are our undergrads and grads who are trained as part of our FabLab team. And they are here to support from when they're on shift. And those are usually between 9 and 9, Monday through Thursday, 9 to 5 on Friday, and then weekend hours. And that changes every semester, that schedule, just based on what classes people are taking and what shifts they're able to sign up for. Another follow-up question, are we allowed to use tools without supervision? There are some that absolutely you can. We do that kind of basic intro training with everyone. And what we try to do is build up to kind of a proficiency and a comfort on a number of our tools. So tools that are in our open lab, like our sewing machines, our CNC sewing machine, some of our 3D printers, some of the 3D printers upstairs in studio, our foam cutters, some of our hand tools. Yes, you can use those without supervision because we do and you can do what you need to do. There are some things like the wood shop that we do have closed down, and it is used when someone from the crew is on shift. Those are just higher hazard tools, and just we like to give you all the support you need. We also have a no blood, no bodies policy here, so we're trying to make it as safe as possible. That's our kind of number one rule. And so that would be some of the equipment, that's why we kind of have supervision, or we have supervision building towards kind of a proficiency and an independence, depending on what it is.
And
cool.
Just to jump in to clarify a little bit about the 3D printers. So we have at least 3 different formats of that down here and upstairs in studio that are all basically 24 hours a day access. And then the queues for each of those are handled a little bit differently depending on the software or how the machine operates. So there's either some kind of queue or it's like first come, first serve. But yeah, that's pretty much open access all the time. And then I'm actually blanking if Melissa had said this, but the lasers are open basically all the time except for like midnight to 6 a.m. so that nobody is getting a little sleepy and nodding off the laser cutter at 3 a.m. You don't want that. So besides that,
But
yeah, it's pretty open.
I did forget to mention that the laser cutters are one of those tools that you use independently. So we do that training. We do a quick little training assignment, if you will, just to make sure that you're running through the buttons within a week of learning them. And even if you have laser cutter training, it's always good to know the cast of characters you're actually working with, as with any tool, and how those buttons work. And so it's just basically to get you to go through those buttons again. And those are available by signing up. There's an online sign up for 2-hour chunks, and students sign up on their own. And if you think that you're going to need help, we encourage people to sign up when someone is on shift in the wood shop, because they can float throughout the lab and they can help. Stephen asks, could you talk a little bit more about the robotics portion of the lab? Absolutely, it's one of my favorites. So we've been building our KUKA robotics fleet over the last, 6 or 7 years now, 7 years. And faculty and staff who are involved in teaching that equipment. We have 4 KR10s, or 3 KR10s and 1 KR6. The number is related to how much of a payload the robot can handle. So they handle mostly end effectors that are smaller. They're really great for starting to teach people how to use robotics, how to build the end effectors or the tools on the end of the robot, and test out some of your hopes and dreams at the smaller scale, or even at full scale. I've done a lot of work full scale with our smaller robotic arms. We do have the ability to put those robots together in something called a robo team. So 2 of them can work together on a system or on a setup. We also are getting in this summer a larger KUKA robotic arm, which is an 8-foot arm. It's a KR120. So if you think of 10 kilograms, now we can do 120 kilograms, which is super great. And one of our faculty members, Asan Baharlu, he is actually the first PhD to graduate from the Stuttgart program, the ICD Stuttgart program. And he came here a couple of years ago, and he's been teaching both the basics as well as advanced research. So he's been setting up to do, he's doing a cross grounds research project on 3D printing concrete. And we also he's been working a lot, his background is mostly in working with wood and exploiting the material properties of wood. And he teaches an advanced research studio on that, as well as a seminar. And so they've been putting a robotic spindle on the end of the robot, even at the smaller scale, as well as many other tools. And that's something that I had been building as part of a robotics research group. So the Architectural Robotics Research Group, or ARG, which is here, was a number of alumni actually who had come back, who lived in Charlottesville and was coming back to kind of build out workflows and tools that are all still here for people to use. And that's everything from hot wire cutting, full scale prototypes for furniture, to 3D printing in plastic, to research projects using magnets and ferro resin structures, which we were able to publish a research paper at the Acadia conference, which was super great. So there's a lot that's building in the robotics part of the lab. And if that is exciting to you, we're very excited to get your hands on that as soon as we possibly can. So if you have a follow-up to that question, just go ahead and chat it for sure. Philip asks another great question about material for model making. Do we need to buy them independently online, local shops, or does the school provide them? And are there any local shop references for you to know? So you bring most of the materials that you are going to need, unless it's one of the larger build studios or seminars, which sometimes have funding for building, like let's say you were doing some sort of large scale piece. And so if you're doing model scale, you're mostly bringing it yourself. One of the things Trevor and I have been working on more is kind of building up the recycling workflow. So, and the students have been doing that as well, so that there are places around the school, like if you need a piece of chipboard, that you might be able to find something that you need. And we have a free shelf for wood. So if you're, and we have a lot of hardware so that you can come down to the lab and kind of take what you need. If it's something specific, we have a few different places that we partner with. There are a lot of reclaimed lumber places around here. So if you're looking to get into nice lumber, whether you're building at the furniture scale or you're just building block models out of wood, which is pretty frequent, we have a few different places. Gaston and Wyatt is a big mid-Atlantic cabinetry and furniture place that is based in Charlottesville, and we work with them quite a bit. And we have a bunch of local farms that kind of have a lot of lumber that they are very welcoming of students. We do have a big box store. We have a Lowe's in town, which is here, but we send a lot of people online to places like McMaster-Carr or Granger, which always miraculously ship within a day, which is kind of great. And we have the bookstore. The bookstore is our main kind of model making store. So things like all the chipboards, cardboard, the laser cutterable acrylics, and various other things that one would need is within a 10-minute walk of this. It's less than 10-minute walk of the school. It's next to our large library down the hill. And they have a stock specifically based on what we ask for. So students are always talking to them about what is the needs, whether it's specific glues or adhesives or things like that. And they try to get that in stock, and they're able to kind of keep a larger stock than we would be able to at the school. Anything to add to that, Trevor?
No, I think you covered it. That's pretty much the range. I mean, sometimes for a variety of reasons, there might be some kind of shortage of acrylic and like for laser cutting, and there are a few other alternative sources of that in Charlottesville that we can point people to. A couple of local sort of like glass shops will stock acrylic, or there's always Amazon. Things are a little backordered right now, as I'm sure people are aware, but in general, yeah, that works.
Our local shops are really great about working with the community and working with the school. So like for acrylics, Trevor was just mentioning, there's a place called Charlottesville Glass and Mirror and Dodson Glass and Mirror. We love supporting local, and they're really great for that. So yeah. Do students have a desk or a space to lock or leave their possessions or their in-process models, or do we need to take them home? So if you are in the architecture department or the landscape architecture department, you have a space called a studio space. It's basically a desk. The majority of them are on the 3rd and 4th floors of Campbell Hall, which is where all of those studios or most of those studios take place. And so you have a little space for lockable stuff and drawers and a desk to put things. So that's kind of your home away from home, if you will. Down in the lab, if you're in one of the FabLab studio spaces, you kind of have a lot more storage available to you as part of the class. So there are racks, full racks that we have. I think we show some of them in the tour, in the garage area that we've built specifically for, built out for the needs of each individual studios or class. So yeah, so I think that those are available so that you can keep a lot of stuff here. In terms of the open lab, though it is open 24/7, it's more of what we call the hot desk situation. So you come down, you build a bunch of stuff, and then you bring it back upstairs with you if you're not in the FabLab studio spaces. there's one other thing I was going to say. Sometimes there are things that are in progress that just shouldn't move. Like you're casting something, or you have something that is precariously built. Between our wood shop, our open lab, and our outdoor work court, which also has a lot of racks in it for mostly casting formwork and things like that, or kind of bundles of lumber that are coming in that are awaiting processing. We have something called parking passes where we take all of your information, we leave it there and make sure it doesn't go away. And then we go from there. So there are spaces to put things. You don't have to take them back to your apartments. There's definitely spaces within Campbell Hall. I should take a quick mention of the urban planners and our historians, because we have one of the historic preservation seminars right now that is in the FabLab studios, and they're leaving all of their work here as well. There are also lounges for those two departments, and there's a lounge for our PhD students. So both of those things have kind of also storage space within the school in order to leave things, or we kind of work it out. Yeah. Does anyone have a question that they haven't put in the chat that they are wanting to yell out? Or a space that wasn't in the tour that you're like, show us this. Trevor and I, even though it'll be somewhat motion sickness, we can walk around the lab if you want. I would love to hear a little bit, as people are coming up with some more questions, what kind of fabrication research work any of you might be interested in, or have been involved in, or would love to get involved in. And we can talk a little bit about the specific faculty and staff who are running those types of things, or the kind of equipment that might be here for that type of work. Or for models, whatever. We know that there's research done at a lot of different scales, or design through making, that is part of people's process, was part of my process. So I understand making things physical completely. Anything that people have been working on or would like to get involved with. The staff abilities to have like an experimental plot out there, and that was turned into kind of a class for the landscape students where they were building kind of data sensor tools that would go out there and kind of track either moisture in the soil or ambient or conditions in the environment, and they were kind of using those tools to kind of build in a different way, which was pretty cool. So I would say there are a lot of other courses that are not specifically fabrication based in terms of this is why you are taking this class in order to learn this tool, but it's more application based. And so how do those physically manifest? And I think for a lot of departments, in all four departments that are in the school and some of the PhDs, that physical prototyping is just part of what they are doing. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question. Everett asks, what are some common FabLab mistakes or mishaps? That would be good to know in advance. That's a fantastic question.
Great
that's
question,
really funny.
You're a top-notch FabLab citizen already, if you're wondering that.
Excellent. It's funny. Some of the ways that when we see things that are happening that are, Trevor was just mentioning the person who tried to cut the coconut on the bandsaw. That was a fun day. We send out these emails to the student body called Dear Zombies. It's just from my own background in architecture school when I wasn't sleeping very much. And I said, those things that I did are just not the smartest choice. But if I had slept, those would have been smart choices. I would have made better choices. So we sent out these Dear Zombie emails, and they're to the student body to say, we saw something that was unsafe. We know that if it was person who has slept you and not zombie you, you would have not made this choice. And there's a few things like, you know, walking away from the laser cutters unattended, and like small things like that where you're like, if you thought that through. So I would say the biggest, most of the common mistakes and mishaps are from not sleeping or rushing, where you're like, I have to get this done because this is a deadline and I'm not thinking this through. And no matter where you are, what you're doing, it's a pretty good rule of thumb to kind of take a moment to think it all the way through, to say, especially with fabrication, everything takes 3 times as long as you think it's going to. You're like, I'll just quickly go build this thing. And you're like, that's not in the cards for you. So I think building in that time to make and building in that time to think it through and to make sure that you have time to consult if you need it is a pretty common mistake, not in terms that's saying anything about our student body, but just when you get all of these projects that are coming in, you're like, all right, how am I doing time management? I think it's just a time management thing that people are always figuring out as they're going through grad school. And how to do. I think tapping in, I would say not a mistake, but a missed opportunity is tapping into the expertise of our crew and our team and the team of makers around grounds. So people who are not taking advantage of the things that are here or those consults and saying, you know what, I have this idea, but I don't know how to do it. So I'm going to leave that as a barrier. We're here to try to break down as many barriers as we can to get people over the fear of spinny blades or just that barrier of, you know, I've never done it before. And so I don't know if I should, or I have this easier route that maybe I'll go. And to say like, no, actually, I'm going to take that on and I'm going to build up my skills and to kind of get that time to consult and say, let's teach you, let's do it. And kind of dovetailed with that is taking the short courses when we offer them. So we do a lot of these short course workshops that just build more tools into your toolbox. So if you are excited to learn about the CNC router, you don't have to wait for your studio or your seminar to come down and to have that as part of the curriculum. It behooves you to learn it as soon as you get here, if you can. Of course, there's some like digital modeling skills that need to go with that, but not many. So I think, you know, finding projects that you want to do where you're like, hey, I'm just going to do this thing for myself. That's okay, because we think that just getting your hands on the tools as much as possible is the way to go. So people who wait until the last minute to say, oh, now I will learn how to 3D print and make this model, it doesn't stick. It'll go in one ear and out the other, and they'll have this plastic piece or this clay piece, and they'll be like, glad I made it. But when you really kind of engage with that process, it sticks with you. You're able to use it as a design driver and future projects. And then you just build that as part of your conversation in a review. I see people who are part of that conversation all throughout the semester. They use those models or use that prototype in ways that their peers are not, because they've just invested so much in the process that they understand it and they understand what they're doing. And I think that's an opportunity, not necessarily a mishap, but an opportunity. Hello, Viva. You have a question coming in.
While we're waiting for that question to finish, I would just tack onto that and say, like, the most sort of general thing that I see, and also I've only been here for about a year, and so just in the first, semester and a half or so, I would say that it's just that students don't engage or ask the questions, and that might come from a number of sources. Either they're like, oh, people are busy, or I can't find someone right now, or they're like, I don't want to bother them, or I got this, I'll figure it out, or something like that. And I think that in engaging and just sort of saying, here's what I'm trying to do, and then getting a consultation from one of us or one of our crew members is like a really great way to start, instead of just being like, I think I know what I'm going to do, and just sort of blow through it. And oftentimes that leads to people doing things that are going to result in poorer quality, or they'll be less safe, or it'll just take them like way longer, or they're using the wrong materials, or a number of things. So I think just like engaging and asking the questions, like we're always happy to answer those questions.
Cool. All right, so the question has come in. It says, what is one thing that sets UVA's Fab Lab apart from all other Fab Labs of all other architecture schools? Interesting question. I want to say, first off, I want to give a shout out to all of the other Fab Lab managers who are out there. We're all kind of in a friend network and talk to each other quite frequently. And people are doing really cool things all over the place. I'm really always very impressed with those conversations and how we all learn from each other. So we're all sharing kind of tips and tricks and tools and different things that we've done to solve different problems and opportunities. So it's all a really fun community that we're part of. What is the one thing? There's a lot of things. I think one of the things about UVA, just in general, is we've always been kind of hands-on, mostly in the modeling area of things. That has always been a really important part of the curriculum. Details have always been a big part of the curriculum, and understanding how things are actually built. So you can make anything in the computer and you can render it out, and that's awesome. But how that then translates into the built environment is something that I really appreciate about the curriculum that's here. And that engages Trevor and our crew and myself in ways that are really awesome and challenging, because students aren't just saying, I can make this double curvature in the computer and that's it. But instead they're like, what materials can I actually engage to make this happen? So we have a materials collection as part of our fine arts library that is, that kind of can help students to understand new materials that are coming on the market. The connections that we make all over our grounds is part of that. I find a lot less silos at UVA than I've ever seen or heard of in other universities. All of our shops, labs, and maker spaces around our campus, again called grounds, are in a network called Maker Grounds. So there are tools that we're sharing and expertise that we're sharing and faculty and staff who are here for you. So if you're getting into a project that is involving material science, the connections are readily available for you. No one is saying, no, you can't come in because you're not in our department. They love people, especially coming from the School of Architecture, no matter what department you are in here. People around grounds really look to us and say, yeah, I want them on my team. I'd love them as part of my research. I would love them to test this thing. I'd love to talk to them about their project. So whether it's structural testing of concrete over at the Virginia Department of Transportation Research Lab, which is part of UVA, which we've done on a number of occasions with different students and projects, or it's starting research kind of across grounds that involves fabrication and our lab. I mean, it is happening, and it is a vibrant kind of community. And so I think that that's a really unique part of the way that UVA just works and its lifeblood. And that's been a really great way to manifest in the Fab Lab from different ways. Trevor, do you have another thing that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I don't have as much experience in terms of like understanding other architecture schools the way that Melissa has, experience in interacting with a lot of those folks over many years. But to me, I was sort of, it was impressed upon me when I was first coming here that it seemed unusual that students just jump in there and operate all the equipment themselves. And I think that that is not generally true at a lot of other schools. They might have a large format CNC router, but they're going to say, okay, send me your file and I'll then like run it for you. Whereas here, we train you on how to use all the equipment and you're the person running it, which is fun and exciting and just a different way of learning about using the tools and influences, hopefully, your design process along the way.
Yeah.
We got another question from Everett, a follow-up here, and it says, I don't have a lot of experience with 3D, but I feel pretty comfortable with 2D art and design. Do you have any insight on easing or taking advantage of that transition?
Ooh, I like it. I would say one of the things that really helped me is to start thinking. It's kind of two ways. One of the things that kind of got me from 2D to 3D was to start by layering to kind of understand three-dimensional geometries. So whether that was layering up similar to the way the 3D printers do, or what we call pancake models, which is laser cut material that then kind of gets stacked like a stack of pancakes in order to kind of make a form, and just starting to think in that way. Or it's something that folds, something that can be cut and folded in a specific way that goes from two-dimensional material to 3 dimensions. I mean, this is how construction works in a lot of ways. Is you're taking something that's 2D and you're making it 3D, whether you're bending it, or you're cutting it, or you're stretching it, or steaming it, or sewing it. There's a lot of different ways. And so I think starting to understand kind of how that material starts to make shape and make volume has always been really helpful for me to then kind of switch into that mode. And then when you start to make those geometries, so many other tools are then available to you. So I think it's finding the materials that you want to. I use material exploitation a lot as a term because you're kind of taking the characteristics of materials. So if you feel comfortable with paper, then it's starting to, like, you can origami it in many different ways, but and start to fold it. But then it's like, well, how do you cut it accurately? How do you start making kind of tabs and things that start to connect? Or how do you start to sew that and turn that into fabric? And then fabrics have kind of their own material processes. I think another way is to dive into the software. So if you're kind of looking at the program in the fall and you're saying, you know what, I don't have any experience with three-dimensional software, there's a lot that's out there that's available to you right now. Though most of the students in the school use something called Rhino and Grasshopper, which is a plugin to Rhino that allows you to parametrically change geometries or set up geometries or systems. There's things like Fusion 360 from Autodesk or even just AutoCAD that is available to you with an EDU address for free. And right now, a lot of different companies are right now making all of their software available for free so that people can be learning them. And I would say jump in. I would say just start on there's plenty of tutorials out there that will get you started. There's actually a Rhino 90-day trial, which will take some of the things that you want to be doing. And go through some of those tutorials and just start testing them. Start seeing what different words that are in your everyday language start to translate into something that makes three-dimensional shape. I think what's harder for people to understand is how that then translates to 3D space. And so that's why I love building one-to-one scale, whether that's just kind of in your person or on your person, and using yourself as a client to kind of then say, if I build this thing and I step into it, what is that like? So if that's something that's important to you, like going physical, then great. If you have a VR headset as part of gaming, we have a lot of VR and AR headsets that we're starting to use for various fabrication processes, representative processes in all over the school. Get in there and start, take some of those things that you're starting to make and put them into the VR headset. Unity is one way of kind of going back between that and virtual reality. And I think they just announced that they're going to make a bunch of things free and open for students. So if you're the kind of person who needs to physically step into your digital model, you can do that. You can even do it with your phone or a tablet if you don't have a full VR headset, and kind of take advantage of different ways that you would kind of go in. I know I went off on a tangent in verbosity, but hopefully that answered your question. All right. I know it's 12, and I want to be cognizant of your time, but Trevor and I will stay on a little bit longer if people have questions or you didn't want to ask in front of the whole group, though probably all of those questions are valid for all of you. We're happy to keep talking. We're happy to talk about our favorite things in Charlottesville. If you have questions, Trevor, I don't know if he said in his background, but he went to UVA. He's a double who, so he went to undergrad and grad school here. So he's very, very aware. He was in the mechanical engineering department. So he's very well aware of Charlottesville and UVA as well from a different perspective than even me. So happy to keep taking questions. And if you need to contact us for any reason or have questions further after this, you can contact us at fablab@virginia.edu. So FABLAB at Virginia, spelled out, .edu. And we'd be happy to answer your questions. So thanks everyone for a great Q&A. Watch that. We should type the email. Excellent question. Yes, there it is. Oh, I just sent it to Rebecca. Not to everyone. There we go. Sent to everyone. Cool. Awesome. All right. If you want to go, you can go. Otherwise, we'll hang out a little bit. Thank you, everybody. Cool. Yeah. Do you have any recommendations on what kind of laptop a first-year architecture student should buy? Yeah, our IT department actually has. I wonder if we can find that page. It's on the website, the arch.virginia.edu website. Our IT department has made suggestions on all of the different types of kind of recommendations they have if you're going to use a PC or a Mac. And we do have kind of a group of people who are using both. There is a laptop. I'm going to maybe put my foot in my mouth here, but there is a laptop requirement, I believe. I'm pretty sure. There it is. It's a computer requirement. I highly suggest getting a laptop because the more things that are happening in the school, the more flexible classrooms are getting, which is really great. The other thing that our IT department is doing, which is super awesome, is they have a whole thing called the virtual desktop system and Classroom Anywhere. And what that's doing is allowing students to tap in, no matter what requirements their laptop has, to then tap into that virtual desktop and be able to get the whole host of software that you won't be able to get as a student, and you'll be able to tap into the school licenses that way from your own equipment. So we use that in the Fab Lab quite a bit. Though a lot of our softwares, especially for 3D printing, is in the cloud or available in the cloud. So I defer to them in terms of like graphics cards and things like that. But it's all through, they even have kind of setups, I believe, to go through Cavalier Computers, which is our computer group through the bookstore, to then just order like the School of Architecture base that you can get. And so if you're looking for one, I would start there and see if you have other requirements that you would need to kind of build it up.
One reflection I would have on that is like a big divide is the Mac versus Windows kind of thing. So I would say that's a very personal preference kind of thing. You know, Rhino does exist for Mac. It is not exactly in parity with the Windows version, but the differences are becoming less and less all the time. They keep updating it. And so I've talked to students here who run only Rhino on Mac, and they're like, yeah, it works great. I don't have any problems with it. There might be some kind of specialized like Grasshopper plugin that doesn't work or isn't available for Mac for whatever reason. But it's more like if you're most comfortable in a Mac environment, you prefer that, go for it. Don't be deterred by that. There's, you know, boot camp and parallels options like that to run Windows if you need to. And as Melissa was just mentioning, there's the virtual desktops will really open up the possibilities for using a sort of virtualized Windows machine if you need to do that for rendering or something specialized. Keeping in mind there is what they call the Apple tax, which is like for basically the same hardware specs, it costs like twice as much for an Apple machine. So if you're not in that realm already, like, there's no reason to go there. You can get a really great Windows machine for a lot less. So it's a matter of personal preference on that front.
Yeah. Trevor is a Mac user coming to the school, and he got a Microsoft machine. Both of us have Surfaces, and I love it. I run the robots off of my Microsoft Surface. And Trevor, coming from the Mac world, is finding all of the different kind of differences. So yeah.
It's been a little painful on Windows, but yeah.
Someone says, I'm a Mac user all the way, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, that's totally cool. I would say that there are just some plugins to the Grasshopper environment that are, I think the user base is frantically trying to move over to the Mac version of Grasshopper. But a lot of people run Parallel or things like that, that people are finding is useful as well for certain plugins. Kind of just depends on what they're up to. Someone asked, I'm used to using a desktop computer for working, so will it be inconvenient if I don't get a laptop? We have students who have a desktop, and I would just check the requirements to make sure that hasn't migrated to a laptop requirement. What I've noticed for people who have a desktop versus a laptop is that for some of their classes that are not up in studio, if they are not in a classroom that has computers within it, we have a number of computer classrooms as well, they find it more difficult to either follow along a tutorial or to kind of set up, but it's not a huge disadvantage. I would say that those students have found really great ways of kind of transferring back to their main machines. But I think what I'm seeing, the trend is that people are doing more laptop-based work, and they're doing a laptop and then they're setting up their studio desk with like a larger screen. So like a larger, just like a larger screen to work off of. But if you are a desktop computer user and you hate laptops for some reason, I would just check the requirements and make sure it doesn't say that there's a laptop requirement, and I'm putting my foot in my mouth, but I would just say, just check it, and that there is more, especially with the desktop anywhere. I mean, the desktop anywhere, that we're trying to set up the school in terms of its spaces for more laptop use. But that's kind of up to you. Is there a specific Windows laptop that is better than the rest? I don't know. I'll tell you what I have. I have a Surface Pro 3. I love it. It runs everything that I need to. It runs Rhino and Adobe and programs for the robot and Microsoft and all of those other things all at once without lagging. But that's just my own experience. I can't really say one way or the other. Trevor, do you have more things to say about that?
Well, the one clarification I was going to make on the desktop versus laptop thing is just that, so according to, our head of IT within the A school is a person named Eric Field. He is also a faculty member. He teaches a few courses, and I believe that from his perspective, there is a laptop requirement, but there's no enforcement mechanism, so there's no way to like make people have a laptop. But some people do have desktops upstairs, so that is a viable option, I suppose. In terms of like what machine, it's really hard to be specific about like one versus the other. I've seen people with ThinkPads, and that works great for them. I've seen other people with Lenovo's or whatever else. I mean, it's as long as you have the right sort of specs, mostly in terms of like probably graphics and RAM and things like that, then you should probably be okay.
We have a question from Philip talking a little bit about the town lifestyle, events, grocery markets, general things, and a little bit about housing. And And Rebecca, feel free to jump in here as a student if you'd like. Charlottesville's a really awesome, vibrant town when it is not the pandemic. And so we have kind of two main centers of the town. One is the UVA corner and the UVA grounds, which there are things happening all the time. Whether those are arts events or the museum events, like every final Friday of the month, there's like all sorts of things that are happening involving the arts kind of around grounds, as well as just events that you can sign up for, whether those are lectures around that are open to the public. I mean, it's great to be part of like such a large university where you could go to all sorts of events that are happening. And there's great events between the community and the university around Thomas Jefferson's birthday, which is coming up. It's called the Tom Tom Festival, as well as the Thomas Jefferson medalists. And there are big kind of events around the university giving out these very special medals to people, as well as some very high on leaders, and architecture is one of them. And kind of a big arts festival that happens in town. Charlottesville is like a little town of many, many festivals. So if you like there's the Festival of the Book that happens every year. There's the Virginia Film Festival that happens here. There's all sorts of music that happens throughout. It's a big music town, probably stemming from Dave Matthews' origins being in Charlottesville. So it's kind of a really vibrant town in that way. There's also a lot of markets. So if you're a person who's interested in the growing season being a really long time, I was coming from New York City and Boston from before this, so it always amazes me that things are blooming in like February. And so to be able to get fresh produce kind of like for 10 or 11 months out of the year is pretty special. And there's a huge farmers market in Charlottesville, and they actually connect a little bit with the university on that end. So there are definitely things that are happening to do all throughout the city. And the university that you can take advantage of. And terms of housing, I might refer to some of the students on this one, and you could probably email admissions and kind of find out some more information. I know there's a big graduate student housing kind of group that are based on grounds. And so right around the architecture school, like very close distances, kind of up Rugby Road a little bit and kind of in that area, is also a lot of undergrad housing. A lot of the fraternities and sororities are there. And so that's just kind of the vibe there. But I think on JPA, there's a lot of housing for both Jefferson Park Avenue, which is a little bit south of the campus. And then anywhere in downtown and Belmont, which is still within biking distance and bus distance, very close, is all a great place. That's kind of in the direction I live, more towards downtown. Trevor does as well. It's just kind of also a really great place to be living.
Yeah, just to weigh in on this a little bit, I'm a big fan of Charlottesville. I think it's an amazing place. Just the brief thing that I would say about that is Charlottesville, to me, for the size population it is, the size city it is, it has like a really disproportionate amount of like music and arts and culture and awesome things happening that like for any other similarly sized city in Virginia, like it's hard to find that. So it's really kind of unfair. That's the unfair advantage of Charlottesville. So if you're a big fan of like live music, it's a great place for that. And yeah, the downtown mall is pretty cool place to get away from the university vibe and feel more of Charlottesville. And if you've ever been to Burlington, Vermont, there's a walking mall downtown there that's called Church Street. The same designer who designed that made the Charlottesville downtown mall, and so it's got a very similar feel to that. But yeah, great city with a lot going on. And as far as the housing thing, I would just say, check out the wide range of options. There's not as much sort of upperclassmen and graduate student housing through the university, but there is some, so check it out. And then otherwise, just think about your daily routine and what you would like to have. Like, do you plan on walking into school? Do you plan on biking? Would you take the bus? It's not as much of an option to like drive into Campbell Hall, so like don't expect that. But anyway, just
Pay
think
for
what
parking. Yeah, there's parking that is available, but it is by like a permit, which is fairly expensive, but it is open. It's down the hill from us, and it's open after 5 o'clock, and on weekends for free. So it's like, it's doable, but it's not something that you would normally do in general, unless you're getting that. So, yeah. Any other questions that we have from our last groups here? It's good to see you all, or at least talk to you all here.
Cool.
Yeah, you can bike and walk from a lot of different places. It is depending on how well you bike. Charlottesville does have a lot of hills, but I shouldn't be saying anything about biking. I don't bike. Trevor bikes.
Yeah, so I live north of downtown and I bike in every day, and it's like, I don't know, 2.5 miles or something, but it's a very nice ride, especially on an April day like today. So happy to take any further questions, but otherwise, thanks everybody for participating.
Yeah. Biking in snow or rainy days.
Yeah, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing.
There's your answer.